A media earthquake is shaking the foundations of one of television's most iconic news programs. After decades of projecting journalistic authority, the facade is crumbling as an executive producer with extraordinary tenure abruptly resigns amid swirling controversy. What prompted the sudden departure that insiders call a full-blown editorial meltdown? And how is President Trump's multi-billion-dollar lawsuit against CBS connected to this implosion? And why does the timing coincide perfectly with a massive corporate merger that requires federal approval? The patterns of deception exposed in this investigation reveal a propaganda machine that's been manipulating American public opinion for decades. So don't click away. You're about to discover how the media elite has been lying to you. And while the media empire's blood pressure soars under Trump's lawsuit pressure, millions of Americans face their own health crises. According to a 2024 CDC study, nearly half of all adults have high blood pressure, yet only 1 in 4 have it under control. Just as mainstream media outlets distort reality, hypertension silently damages your body. That's why I started using this incredible product to manage my blood pressure, cholesterol, and weight naturally. Its triple action formula with white mulberry leaf and cinnamon bark powder. It regulates blood pressure, balances blood sugar, and improves cholesterol levels, all while fighting the fake news of insulin resistance. Get up to 40% off by clicking more below this video and tapping boostwithgary.com. So, Real Robert just posted this on X. 60 Minutes facilitated the overthrow of the United States government on November 3rd, 2020. He says very clearly, now arrest this bitch. Arrest them all for the crimes of fraud, election interference, racketeering, campaign finance violations, and conspiracy for the overthrow of the United States government. Leslie Stahl is who he's referring to specifically. Remember this moment? Who will ever forget this?
You know, this is 60 Minutes. And we can't put on things we can't verify.
You won't put it on because it's bad for Biden.
We can't put on things we can't verify.
Leslie.
You know what you told me a long time ago when I asked why you keep saying fake in the media?
Yeah.
You said to me, I say that because I need to discredit you so that when you say negative things about me, no one will believe you.
I don't have to discredit you.
But that's what you told me.
You've discredited yourself.
You told me that.
Leslie, you've discredited yourself. When you say that you're not going to cover Biden, you're going to ask him what flavor ice cream he has, okay?
That's not
Instead of why did Hunter get $3.5 million from Moscow? Instead of why is an energy company paying your son $183,000 a month or whatever they're paying him, and he has no experience in energy. You know, you discredit yourself. I don't have to discredit you.
So this story about Hunter and his laptop, some repair shop found it. The source is Steve Bannon and Rudy Giuliani.
I don't know anything about that. I just know it's a laptop, and they haven't.
And you're making this one of the hottest, most important issues in the rallies.
It's a very important issue to find out whether or not a man's corrupt, who's running for president, who's accepted money from China.
Now, what you're seeing here is the angle that President Trump's team recorded of that 60 Minutes interview with Leslie Stahl, where she continually discounted the validity of Hunter Biden's laptop. This was clear election interference. They were running cover for Joe Biden. And now 60 Minutes is under fire, big time, crumbling before our eyes. 60 Minutes executive producer fleeing the sinking ship as Trump's $20 billion lawsuit exposes their corrupt editorial practices. No more hiding. Bill Owens, the third executive producer in 60 Minutes' 57-year history, has resigned, claiming he would not be allowed to run the show as he wanted. Translation: the elites are finally being forced to face accountability for their lies. Listen to this. The bombshell resignation.
Chloe, The executive producer of CBS News' 60 Minutes, calling it quits today, resigning from the long-running Sunday news program, saying that he has lost his journalistic independence. His departure comes in the middle of President Donald Trump's $20 billion lawsuit against CBS and 60 Minutes. NBC's Chloe Melas joins us now. Chloe, what more do we know about this shakeup?
This is huge news, Ellison. I mean, this literally shook the media news world today. I mean, Bill Owens has been with 60 Minutes for over 2 decades, and his statement says that he had a baby and one on the way in the midst of when he first started his career, and he's been at CBS for about 30 years. I mean, just to put it into perspective, I mean, 60 Minutes, it's an iconic show, and they've only had 3 EPs, and Bill obviously the third, so it's going to be difficult to fill that spot. In the meantime, they do have a woman named Tanya Simon. Her father was a war correspondent on the show as the interim executive producer, but this comes amid President Donald Trump suing CBS for $20 billion because he claims that 60 Minutes falsely edited an interview with Kamala Harris ahead of the presidential election. And so, 60 Minutes has refused to apologize, standing by this, saying that they did nothing wrong. And you have Owens saying in his statement today, because we don't know exactly why he's resigning, but he says, over the past months, it has also become clear that I would not be allowed to run the show as I always have run it. What does that mean? Sherry Redstone, who's in the midst of trying to merge Paramount and CBS together with Skydance. I mean, this is a massive billion-dollar deal that is undergoing scrutiny by the FCC right now with a Trump appointee who has been very vocal against CBS's DEI practices and, really, really looking at this. And we know that things have been delayed amid President Trump's lawsuit, which they have just agreed to move into mediation. But this is messy. And to have this longtime EP step down, what does that say about this venerable news magazine program? Who's going to lead it into the future? And what exactly does this mean when he says that he couldn't do his job the way that he wanted to do it? A lot of questions there.
NBC's Chloe Melas, thank you.
Wake up, America. This is the same venerable news magazine that shilled for Democrats for decades, now facing a $20 billion lawsuit from President Trump for deceptively editing Kamala Harris' interview. How many other interviews did they manipulate? Megyn Kelly weighing in.
Buckle up. 60 Minutes is in serious turmoil, thanks to its executive producer, Bill Owens, quitting and publicly throwing a temper tantrum. What happened? Oh, buckle up. On Tuesday, the EP of 6 years, but only the third ever to hold that post in nearly 6 decades at 60, said he would be resigning from the Sunday news program, suggesting he felt the network was encroaching too much on his editorial calls. This could not be tolerated at the vaunted 60 Minutes, you see, which is entirely unbiased and uninfluenced by anything other than the facts. All right? You may not know that, but it's true. Just ask them. Mr. Owens and others argue that the show has had total independence from the network brass for the show's 57 years on the air, and that suddenly that was changing. Under Don Hewitt, the original EP, they said, hey, we had independence and it worked out pretty well. He was there for almost 60 years. It's crazy the number of years he was there. Under Jeff Fager, he was there for the next 14, less so. And under Mr. Owens, 60 Minutes has all but lost its mind, shilling for progressives. And I, for one, am thrilled to see him go. Not that I think this broadcast with its current staff is salvageable. I'm just in favor of dismantling this current version of the show, which would appropriately fit in any hour of MSNBC primetime. The latest meltdown started when Donald Trump filed a $10 billion lawsuit against CBS and its parent company, Paramount, accusing 60 Minutes of unlawful and illegal behavior in what he said was its deceptive editing of the Kamala Harris interview before this last election. You remember they took her word salad answer about Netanyahu and they siphoned it down to make her sound more cogent. We caught it because they put out the wrong version of it when they were teasing the interview, and then they played a different version when she actually appeared. Most legal analysts, including this one, do not see much of any merit in that lawsuit. But Trump has used it as a cudgel over Paramount, whose owner, Sherry Redstone, is trying to sell the company right now to Skydance. And that sale is going to need government approval.
Government approval? You mean like Trump approval? CBS trying to sell Skydance but needs that FCC approval, which Trump appointees control. Connect the dots. This resignation isn't about journalistic integrity. It's about saving $1 billion deal threatened by their own bias. Here is Bill O'Reilly. No spin. Check this out.
It was the founding. When I was a young journalist, I watched 60 Minutes every week, okay? Because it was the best. Good investigative reporting, hard hitting, not a lot of ideology. Then when I advanced in my career, I became friends with Mike Wallace. Some of you know that. He was the guy that influenced me the most he's tough, good interviewer. I knew Don Hewitt, who was the founding producer of 60 Minutes. Both Hewitt and Wallace admired, maybe that word's a little overstated, but they respected, that's a better word, the O'Reilly factor. Because I was tough. And now both were liberal men, but they didn't allow the ideology to drive their reportage. I think that's a fair statement. Okay. But then 60 Minutes took a turn. I'll get to that. I was on there twice, featured twice. Okay? Both times they treated me very, very fairly. So keep that in mind. I'm going to play you a clip in a minute. The current executive producer of 60 Minutes, Bill Owens, yesterday quit. He said, quote, "Over the past few months, it has become clear that I would not be allowed to run the show as I always have run it, to make independent decisions based on what was right for 60 Minutes, right for the audience," unquote. So Owens quits. So why? Because CBS Paramount wants to sell to a company called Skydance, which is run by the son of Ellison, the billionaire. Okay? And that deal has to be approved by the federal government, the FCC. Enter President Trump, who's suing 60 Minutes for $100 billion. Okay, might be a little much, but that's what he's doing. Trump says that 60 Minutes helped Kamala Harris in violation of election laws in 2024 by editing some of her stuff. And that is a pending lawsuit. Now, keep in mind that in order for Paramount CBS to sell to Skydance, all right, they got to get FCC approval. And if Trump says to Brendan Carr, the head of the FCC, hey, you're not approving it, he's not approving a deal. We're talking billions and billions of dollars here.
Who holds the cards now, buddy? Did you forget how 60 Minutes Leslie Stahl refused to acknowledge the Hunter Biden laptop story? Yeah, that's the clip we played for you at the beginning of this segment. Here's more from Megyn Kelly.
Trump has long complained about 60 Minutes being unfair to him and biased in favor of Democrats. And on that, he is 100% correct. Under Jeff Fager, yes, definitely, but especially under Bill Owens. But before we get to Owens, let's take a quick look back at the Fager years and how 60 treated Barack Obama.
You don't have any doubts that you're ready?
No.
Where do you get all this confidence?
How are you finding the job? What's the most frustrating part of the job? Do you take a day off?
Have you gotten lost in here yet? Do you see some hope? Do you think that things are going to get better? What, do you think that you might have the unemployment rate down to 8% by the time the election rolls around?
And this is the most aggressive speech I've seen you give it in a while. Right. What changed?
Why do you think you'd be good president?
Steve asked and answered. Let's move on.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, we almost added the little hearts, the emojis coming out of Steve Kroft in his head for that series of hard-hitting interviews. Not exactly murderer's row, is it? Like back in the Mike Wallace years. Who could forget this absurdity? This was under Bill Owens when Leslie Stahl interviewed Donald Trump in October 2020, just before his re-election battle against Joe Biden, after the Hunter Biden laptop had come out.
It's one of the biggest scandals I've ever seen, and you don't cover it.
biggest...
You want to talk about...
Well, because it can't be verified.
You want to talk about insignificant things.
I'm telling you.
Of course it can be verified. Excuse me, they found the laptop. Leslie.
It can't be verified.
What can't be verified?
The laptop.
Why do you say that?
Because
even the family hasn't... The family on the laptop, he's gone into hiding. For 5 days, he's gone into hiding.
He's preparing for your debate.
Oh, it's taken him...
Yeah, remember that. And remember when they ambushed Governor DeSantis with fake pay-to-play accusations?
In April 2020, obviously fearing that Ron DeSantis might become the eventual Republican nominee, in April 2021, 60 aired a disgustingly misleading report by Sharon Alfonsi suggesting DeSantis was guilty of a pay-for-play campaign contribution scheme by which he offered the COVID vaccination shots at Publix supermarkets as some sort of payback to a grocery store chain that had donated to his campaign. 60 showed a bit of that brief exchange between Alfonsi and Governor DeSantis, in which he offered what looked like a rather lame response to her tough questions and just happened to leave on the editing room floor the bulk of his extremely substantive answer to every point she raised, in which he utterly dismantled her accusations. Even some Florida Democrats, after they saw the piece, lashed out, saying they had told 60 Minutes the public story was, quote, bullshit, but that the producers did not seem to care. It wasn't just political hits on candidates either. Take a look at the show's coverage of, say, climate change. This one's from January 2023.
1970, the planet's 3.5 billion people were sustainable. But on this New Year's Day, the population is 8 billion. Today, wild plants and animals are running out of places to live. The scientists you're about to meet say the Earth is suffering a crisis of mass extinction on a scale unseen since the dinosaurs. A World Wildlife Fund study says that in the past 50 years, the abundance of global wildlife has collapsed 69%, mostly for the same reason.
Too many people, too much consumption, and growth mania.
I would say it's too much to say that we're killing the planet, because the planet's going to be fine. What we're doing is we're killing our way of life.
Amazing. No mention of the number of nearly identical warnings just like this that had rained down upon the populace for years, decades prior to this report, with not a scintilla of accuracy. None of the climate change doomsday predictions has come true. Somehow they forgot that in the piece.
Even Jen Psaki admitted the truth about liberal media. MSNBC viewers expect we're going to talk about Trump. Here is Janine Pirro weighing in on Jen Psaki. Weighing in on Jen Psaki.
And Jen Psaki is telling the truth for a change on why MSNBC is just an echo chamber for the left.
There's obviously a rooted value in the kind of like that MSNBC viewers expect of, like, we're going to talk about the opposition and we're also going to talk about Trump, and it's typically not going to be positive. I don't think anybody watching expects it to be positive, right?
All right, Dana, I heard you react to that.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Well, you know what the question is. I mean, there you've got Jen Psaki saying, well, they expect us to not like Trump.
Yeah, well, and yeah, but we know, like, she had a lifelong Democrat, worked for Obama. That's how I first met her, in the Bush to Obama transition. That's when we became friends. And then she worked for Biden. Like, we all get all that. One thing that's interesting is that when anybody goes against type, it is interesting and it can really help. Yeah. I was reminded of this one time at the briefing room. We were under the gun when I was press secretary. President Bush's numbers were bad. And a reporter says, well, what are you going to do? Because your numbers are so bad. And I said, well, there's only two entities in this town who have worse numbers than us: Congress and you. And that was back then. So then fast forward, and I would just look at the last 4 years. I think that the
Lincoln Project, those buccaneers, as 60 Minutes lovingly called them, were portrayed as heroic, while 60 Minutes ignored the scandals that would later engulf them. No tough questions for these anti-Trump operatives. Selective outrage. Here's more from Megyn Kelly.
Republicans, same time frame, October 2020. 60 took us inside the Lincoln Project's campaign against President Trump. And did they do a hard-hitting expose on the rabidly anti-Trump grifters who are loathed by virtually all Republicans and accomplish little more than successfully lining their own pockets? Let's see.
These buccaneers have made a name for themselves with malicious attack ads, churning out new ones almost daily, most released cost-free on social media. John Weaver feels it's the party that's betrayed him.
I mean, look, Leslie, we've gone from caring about character, rule of law, defending the Constitution, a cogent national security policy, free trade. Where are all those issues? Imagine if you travel the country for 30 years fighting for Republican principles, and you learn it was all a lie. No one cares about all the issues that we fought for.
How painful is it for you to turn against the Republican Party? Do you ever sit around and talk about you're repudiating your life in a way?
How painful is John Weaver, my little buccaneer?
Oh, and it keeps going because the collapse of 60 Minutes exposes what we have known all along. The mainstream media is not about truth. It's about power and control. And this is just the beginning of the great awakening in American media. The elites cannot hide anymore. Accountability is coming. And so is Gary Franchi. So the implosion of CBS 60 Minutes represents a watershed moment in American media history. For decades, these institutions portrayed themselves as objective truth tellers while secretly operating as political activists advancing a specific agenda. As this empire of lies continues crumbling, we must ask ourselves, how many other news organizations are actually propaganda outlets in disguise? What responsibility do media executives bear for deliberately misleading the American public? And most importantly, where will Americans find honest reporting in this new landscape? I'll give you a hint. The next news network. And of course, share your thoughts in the comments section below. We want to hear how you get your news in today's biased media environment. And while you are fighting fake news, check out shop.nextnewsnetwork.com for exclusive Next News Network gear. Show the world where you get your real news as the mainstream media empire continues to collapse under its own corruption.